What I'm going to tell you may surprise you a little bit, but it's not a fair fight what's going on with you right now. You're not fighting fairly at all. Not in the least bit. You're not fighting fairly. And you may say, Z, what in the world you're talking about? Well, there's a reason I'm standing right now. Now, most of you who are watching my podcast episode on my YouTube channel, you know I'm normally sitting down at my desk, but I want to have a talk with you as though you were standing right in front of me. You're not fighting fairly. When you're looking at your life and you're examining either your progress or maybe this new person that you're becoming, because I know the vast majority of you all who follow my podcast episode, you all are just like me, which is why, honestly, I love you all so much, because we seem to go through the same kind of similar cycles. But many of you are in this stage of, okay, I'm stretching, I'm growing, I'm becoming this new wineskin, I'm letting God use me, I'm going to do what I need to do, right? And many of you are stepping out there, right, into this new person that you're becoming. But the internal wars that you're having, and by the way, that's part one of this episode. I'm talking about the internal fight right now. The internal wars that you're having right now is you're not fighting fairly because you're comparing the person you're becoming right now. Just think of it as almost like, I hate to use this terminology, but think of it almost like a child. You're comparing this newer version of yourself that's beginning to mature and grow into this full-grown adult, like this other version of yourself that you used to be when you were successful in whatever it was that you were doing. It's not a fair fight. Let me explain this a little bit more. Let me explain. For many of you who've started with pursuing your goals and dreams in life, or whatever it is that you feel that God has placed in your heart to do, many of you, and I get a lot of emails, a lot of messages from you all, you're looking at what's not sort of measuring up right now in your life in terms of what's not going in the direction you wanted it to go. Or maybe, just maybe, there's some insecurity there, or just maybe you haven't quite hit that success level that you were hoping to get, right? What you got to realize is that this newer version of you also has to learn and mold and grow and get prepared. The other version of you that was doing whatever it was you were doing, let's just say you used to be a nurse, or you used to be a teacher, or you used to be, like in my case, heavily into the corporate world doing corporate presentations, right? Doing my thing, and with tremendous confidence, by the way, right? When you step into this new role of who God has called you to do, you have to understand you are literally becoming a new person. And so you have to learn to fight fair when you're having those internal wars, when you're doing this comparison of why is not life not quite where I want it to be right now, or why am I not quite hitting the levels of success I thought I would hit at this point, or when is this blessing going to take off, or when am I going to da-da-da-da-da. You have to understand, listen carefully. It's not a fair fight because you're comparing the person that you're becoming right now with an older version of you, something you've done in the past a long time ago that maybe at some point you had some success with, and it's just not a fair fight. It's almost as if a new child's been born. Think of it like a baby, a new child's been born, and you're comparing this toddler, let's just say, to this full-grown adult that used to do whatever it was for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years. It's not a fair fight. It's not a fair fight. You may say, well, Z, where in the world are you getting this from? I want you all to look at this little demonstration. This is something that I normally teach inside of my mentorship sessions. For those of you who are members of the Unlocking Greatness community, you've already seen this because I've demonstrated it before. But this is the first time I'm sort of demonstrating something like this to the public. So I want you to look at this picture that I'm putting up on the screen right now. Picture this person as this is you. This is who you are right now, right? And now imagine that you finally get the confidence that, you know what? I'm getting ready now to step out there, and I want to start seeing, some different results in my life. I'm not happy with this person that I've become right now, or I'm trying to stretch and grow, and I'm trying to pursue my God-given talents and gifts and get out there with God, and do what God is telling me to do. So you want to start seeing some different results. Now you see those arrows that you're seeing in the picture, right? Those arrows, just imagine those arrows as, we call it paradigms. Imagine those arrows as old paradigms. So that's your repetition, your habits, what you really think about yourself, the good and the bad and all of that. So just think about that. You may feel a little stuck or trapped because maybe you're having some of the same results, and, we call that being conditioned to your environment. So all of those little red arrows, whether you realize this or not, everyone has some sort of paradigms that are going on in their lives, a system of beliefs, a system of habits, right? So just picture that. And now picture, you now have a new idea. You have the belief that you can step out there and do what you need to do in life. And you're starting to dream again, right? You're starting to whatever. Maybe you join a good mentorship program. You're starting to read books. You're going to seminars and webinars because you want a better life for yourself. You're starting to seek all of that knowledge. So you see what's going on up there in the top part of that head? Now, I'm giving the shortest demonstration of this that I can give. For those of you who are listening to my podcast episode, I have a picture of a person standing there. And this person first had just a blank body. The second picture had all of these red arrows pointing in one particular, direction, representing the old you, the old wineskin, the old paradigm. And now the next picture that people are looking at is a picture where there's a head being shown, and now there's red arrows heading in one direction, but get this, there's yellow arrows heading in another direction. So just picture that for a moment. And that's when you get into talking about your conscious, your subconscious mind, your conscious programming, your subconscious programming. I won't get into all of that right now, but the bottom line is that you're beginning to believe and feel that life can be different for you, right? And you're beginning to step out there and do what you've got to do. Now in this next picture that I'm going to show, you're going to see that there's red and yellow arrows all through the entire body. And that's when, this is the part I'm talking about when I say, the fight isn't fair. You may feel stressed, feel anxious, maybe indecisive or confused, afraid, uncertain. You got out there, you put your big toe in the water, it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. You're not quite sure if you can do that thing that God called you to do, but you're going to step out there and try it, and it worked for a few months or maybe a year or maybe a few days. I don't know, maybe even a few short years. You're not quite certain, and you're having this internal battle with yourself because you're comparing this new person that you're trying to become and trying to develop these new habits, these new routines. You wanted to believe in yourself, but you're still focused on this person that you were before, right? It's not a fair fight. You can't compare like this little child to an adult. It's not a fair fight. But let me give you some encouragement with this. If you continue in that direction, now if you look at this next picture that I'm showing for those of you who are watching my YouTube channel, I'll do my best to describe it. There's a brick wall next to this person. If you continue and you break through that brick wall, you're going to see that on the other side of fear, just on the other side of fear, and there's some scriptures you can look at, by the way, Romans 12:2, which teaches us about being transformed by the renewing of our mind, Hebrews 11:1, which teaches us about, what is faith, having the confidence of what we hope for, the assurance of what we do not see. Matthew 19:26, which teaches us that with man things are impossible, but with God all things are possible. And Isaiah 41:10, one of my favorite passages that teaches us that do not fear. But if you focus on the direction you're going and you get out of this trap of having this unfair fight, this internal unfair fight, wondering, can you do it? Can it be done? This is the person I used to be, and why are my results not the same? And you get into a really good habit of repetition, right? You start getting emotionally connected, right, to this new goal that you have in mind. You're on your knees praying before God and asking Him to give you wisdom and direction and walk in that direction. Eventually, you begin to break through that wall and you begin to come out on the other side. So for those of you, again, who are just simply listening to my podcast episode, there's a picture of a person with all of these yellow and red arrows, right? All through the entire body. And then there's a picture of a brick wall that sort of has a hole in it. The person's sort of breaking through it. And now that the person's broken through the wall, and again, for those who are listening to my podcast episode, there's a picture of the person now on the other side of the wall. And get this, all of the arrows now are yellow, right? Meaning that, okay, this is the new me. I've become a new person. I'm thinking higher. I have great faith. I know that God is going to pull me through. I know that I can achieve and accomplish the things in life, and you're starting to walk as that person. Does that make sense? Now, here's the funny part about all of this. For those of you who are watching my YouTube and you're watching this live, you notice that after you have broken through and you have all those yellow arrows, life is just good, right? Nothing can go wrong. Life is just good. You notice that you come all the way back to being that person again where, wait a minute, why am I starting to feel a little anxious or stressed or trying to figure this out all over again? It's because now you're climbing and going to a higher level. Does that make sense? You're going even higher. You're constantly being transformed. God is constantly calling us higher and higher and higher and higher. So if you really think about it, that internal fight that we have with ourselves, and I pray that this is making sense to you all, especially for those of you who are just listening to my podcast episode, that internal fight that you may be having with yourself, it is not a fair fight because you are comparing this old version of yourself. Picture that person on the other side of the wall. You're comparing that former version of yourself with the newer version that you're becoming, and it's not a fair fight. I pray that that little demonstration helped you that you just saw, at least for those who were able to watch the YouTube. I pray that that helped you. I want to give a little credit to one of my coaches. Scott is such an amazing guy. He's actually going to be teaching at one of our upcoming Unlocking Greatness personal development live workshop sessions. And he's one of those success growth coaches out there. And I just remember when he said to me, and he's probably going to smile when he watches this video because he probably was not expecting me to mention his name. But one of the things that Scott said to me, and I'll never forget it, when I was really getting acclimated in the coaching industry, and many people don't know, I've actually been coaching for a long time. I just, was doing it completely free. Like I would lead these 30-week sessions, 30 weeks, believe it or not, for years, helping people rediscover their dreams, who they are before God, and pursuing their God-given talents and dealing with a lot of issues in their marriages and things like that. But that's another subject. But let me get to my point. One of the things he said to me is, he said, Z, never make the mistake now of comparing this version of you, in this coaching space with the person that you were in the corporate world. That person it took 30-something years to get to that point. And so make sure you don't make that mistake. And I said, wow. I said, I'm so glad you told me that, because really that reminds me of like not fighting fair. It's just not a fair fight when you compare this new person who you are becoming, does that make sense, to the person that you were. And I just remember getting an award for hitting this goal that they give to coaches or whatever. And I just remember thinking, why am I not celebrating this the way that I should be celebrating it? And when I did a little bit more digging, I realized, it's because there's still a little part of me that's looking at the person that I was, right, for 30 plus years, right, and this new person that I'm becoming now. So I pray that this encourages you all. I want to remind you, listen, you're not fighting fair whenever you're looking at your current circumstances, the person that you're becoming now, and you're in any way, fashion, or form comparing with who you were before or results you used to get. Or get this, for those of you who say, well, Z, I'm not comparing to my old version, maybe even comparing to other people out there in the field or in the industry for whatever it is you're trying to do. You may be looking at another author or another whoever, another coach, another whatever, and looking at the success that that person's having, and then looking at you and thinking, okay, what's going on here? Never, ever, ever get into that comparison. It's not a fair fight. Many times what you will find, and this is an honest to God truth, many times, the vast majority of the time, you'll find that person's been doing it 10, 15, 20, in some cases 30, 40 plus years to get to that point. So make sure that you're fighting fairly by having a real honest conversation with yourself, with God, taking a look at, okay, here's who you have me as now, God. I'm not going to focus on comparing myself to not only internally with myself and who I used to be, but with anyone else out there. I'm grateful for where you have me now, and each day I'm preparing and getting better and better and better. I love you all. One little thing I want to say quickly before I close out for those who hear this podcast episode when it airs this Sunday is Scott has agreed to teach a live session inside of the Unlocking Greatness workshop. So for those of you who are already members of the Unlocking Greatness community, make sure you're at our next live workshop session, because Scott is amazing and he's going to be going deeper into growth mindset. And I asked him to come and teach a session, so he'll be teaching the next session that we're having. I love you all. Stay tuned for part 2. Part 2 is going to be on the external fight that's not fair. We're going to talk about how is the external fight not fair? And the answer is not what you may think. So when the next episode airs on Wednesday, you'll be able to listen to that episode as well. I love you all. You're listening to Unlocking Greatness Podcast with Zenja Glass.